Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan AGAJAINIan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're taping at the Hollywood Museum on Highland Avenue in the historic Max Factor building. And waiting to be profiled are actor Ty Jones and curator Aurelia Engel. Actor Ty Jones, who was born in New York, traveled the world with his mother, who joined the military. It's very interesting. Not the father in the military, but the mother. He earned a BFA at University of Delaware, as well as an MFA in classical theater there. And the president of the university gave him the citation for outstanding achievement as an alum. And we're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
So tell us what it was like to be an Army brat, so they say, with a mother instead of, well, you wouldn't know what it was with the father, would you?
No. So yeah, my mom raised me by herself. I'm an Air Force brat, actually.
Oh, is that
so
what
she joined the Air Force, yeah.
And, she did?
Yeah, she did. And it was at a time in 1975-76 where you didn't see too many black women joining in the military. But so my mom is a bit of a pioneer. You know, she was a highly decorated soldier. She was in public affairs, meaning she was essentially like the gatekeeper of all the information.
Oh, she was in the,
she was in
the office?
Sorry?
In the office? She was in the office? Working in the office?
She worked in headquarters on all the bases that we were stationed at.
Oh, that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so that means essentially she was the editor of virtually every newspaper on every base that we were stationed at. And then the end of her career, she worked at the European Stars and Stripes in Darmstadt. So basically that's sort of the pinnacle of a journalist's career in the military, is to work for the Stars and Stripes.
That was the big thing?
Yep, and she did that for 8 years. I believe
and you
she
were
wrote
there?
For I was there from 79 to 82. We were stationed at Rhine Air Force Base at the time, and my mother was editor of the Gateway, which was the military newspaper there. And then we had a couple of more assignments, and then right after I finished high school in 1988, my mother got another assignment back to Germany to work for the Stars and Stripes in Darmstadt.
Is that right?
Yeah, so she had 22 years in the military.
And were you in school all the time at all those places?
Yep, always in school. Sometimes I was in school on base, you know, depending on where we were. And then we, at times, were stationed in places where I went to school off base, you know, among the civilians.
So you learned German. You learned to speak German. What else did you learn?
That's pretty much it. You know, when I was a kid, I played around with Spanish a little bit, but you know, unless they're about 2 or 3 years old, that's about as good as my Spanish is going to get.
Well, we've talked about all this acting and all this training that you've had, but you also sing, because in the Rogue Machine you play Sam Cooke.
Yeah, it's a joy to play Sam Cooke, to get the opportunity to explore this man's life, his world, and to even create for myself what may have been, because some of the things we just don't know, the things you uncover. It was one of those moments in an actor's life. Not too many people have that kind of opportunity. So I got to thank Kemp. I got to thank Rogue Machine. Yeah. Yeah,
let's talk about that. Kemp Power wrote One Night in Miami.
Yeah.
And it's at the Rogue Machine.
Yes, it is.
And you play Sam Cooke, and it's a room with...
Yeah, so it's
a motel room.
It's a motel room. It's Cassius Clay, Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, and Malcolm X. They were all friends in the 1960s.
Unbelievable. Was it true? That was true?
It's a true story, and it's actually a true story as well, that they met at this hotel in Overtown, Miami, which is a black part of Miami.
And we don't know what went on in the room.
We don't know exactly. Correct. That is the historical fiction that he brings to the table.
Right.
But we do know that meeting actually happened. We're waiting for Jim Brown to show up.
Has he done anything? Have you talked to him?
I think there have been many members who were folks that work in Rogue, some of the patrons who are friendly with Jim. So it's just a matter of time before he comes in.
Because Kevin Daniels plays James Brown.
Yeah, Jim Brown.
Jim Brown. Oh, yeah, because James Brown.
Yeah, we don't want to get him confused.
Right.
We don't want to get him confused.
Right,
yeah,
right.
the
James
football
Brown
player.
Sings the football player. So how did he research it?
How did Kevin research it?
Yeah.
I think Kevin did much of what we all did. We read interminably. We actually use Kemp as a huge resource. We also have we had video files, DVDs, things that virtually anything we could get our hands on. Of course, the internet as well too, to learn about this our characters. We took advantage of.
And how long did you play it? Because I think it was an interchanging role, right?
So I, through the month of July, I played the role of Sam Cooke. The idea is that, let me start a little bit before. I read this play 2 years ago, fell in love with it. My company, the Classical Theater of Harlem, we did a reading of it a little over a year ago. Around that same time, a couple months later, the Rogue Machine Theater also did a reading, and I told Kemp, I'm going to come out and do your reading. So I came out, did the reading, and by the time we were done with that reading, which was a little over a year ago, John Flynn, the artistic director of Rogue, came down, stood on the stage and said, we're doing this play next year. So fast forward to now, I had some challenges with making sure that my theater company was in good shape back in New York.
Oh, right, because you had to leave it for
I had
a
to leave
month.
it, and I have 3 small children, 2, 4, and a 6-year-old,
Oh, how
and my
great.
wife. So we had to really think about how much sense it made for us to come out here to do a show, and they have a different contract out here. So it's a 99-seat contract. So essentially, I'm basically paid gas money, which is okay. That's the way the contract is out here. But we had to think very hard and long and hard, my family, about the upside of coming out here. And it has been, the payoff has been enormous. So I am hoping that we can get this play to New York, because it deserves to be seen by many people.
Right.
And I think Kemp's plan is to do it very slowly. So look, I think a lot of people believe that it has legs to go to a commercial house. But once it gets to a commercial house, you're talking $200 and $300 tickets, and Kemp wants young folks to see this. Kemp wants the everyday man to see this play.
Right, because they don't know who those people are.
Some don't know who they are,
Yes.
and I think the content of the story is one that speaks to the common man.
Right, it's very, very good.
Yeah.
It's so well written.
I agree.
And everybody has their moment.
Yes.
And one of your moments is you just start singing on stage. How do you do that?
So yeah, there's a moment in the play where Sam talks about a time where he got to singing songs the way they're meant to be sung. Many of the songs that actually got produced by Sam Cooke are lovely and clean and probably safe enough for all sort of audiences. But Sam really loved to get down. And his nickname was Mr. Soul. They credit him with being the founder or the father of soul music. So he brings church to some of these songs that have these lovely melodies that we hear on your everyday album. And when it goes there is a really, really wonderful moment, particularly for me as an actor in this play.
Well, I was going to say, but here you are, Ty Jones, you have to sing.
Yeah.
No music, no
Yeah,
nothing.
acapella,
You
yeah.
just start singing.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. How do you...
I had to be able. I was raised as a church kid.
So you
and,
knew, were you in the choir?
I wasn't in the choir, but I sat in the pews. I was a little too afraid to get up there, because I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to go to like a Southern
I have.
Baptist church where
I have.
they
In Watts.
God is God is present. You know what I mean? Whether you believe it or not, something's in that room
I
when
agree.
those voices open up. And so I've witnessed that for 18 years of my life. And,
I know, but that doesn't mean your voice is that good. You
no,
just
I
start
mean,
singing like that. It's like so great.
I thank you so much. You're very kind. I got to give credit to the folks back in the church.
What a role. What a role. Wasn't that great?
It's an extraordinary role. It's probably one of the toughest roles that I've ever had to take on, too, because Sam Cooke is intimidating. This is a man who was way before his time, before Berry Gordy. This was a black artist saying, hey, I own my own masters.
Right.
He was #2 at RCA. Elvis was #1. All right, most
There
white
they
artists,
were, right?
most white artists didn't own their own masters. And there's this guy going around telling other artists, hey, you know what, you should own your own masters. That's how you really make money.
That's what he was. He was very far ahead of himself, wasn't he?
Way ahead of time. And so I had to figure out which Sam Cooke was in the room. Was this a Sam Cooke being hounded down by folks who didn't like the idea of him going around telling folks, hey, own your own masters, or the idea of him saying the contract that you've signed is one that exploits you.
But Malcolm X was putting him down. I mean, was not in favor of what he was doing.
Yeah, he challenged him.
He challenged him.
Definitely challenged him, and I think that is what makes this conversation so relevant today. Because I don't know if you've heard, there's been a similar argument, although these are people of completely different backgrounds and times, but between Jay-Z, Sean Carter,
yes,
and Harry Belafonte.
No, I haven't heard that.
So Harry Belafonte essentially took Jay-Z, Sean Carter, and Beyonce to task about their, in the same way that Malcolm X did for Sam Cooke. What's your place in this world?
What's your place?
Yeah,
that's what he kept asking
where's your
him.
responsibility?
Right.
That's kind of what, hopefully I didn't use place the wrong way, but where's your responsibility?
Yes, right.
You have the people in the palm of your hands, and you have a certain responsibility to speak to those people about the injustices in the world.
Right.
Especially when they look like you.
Right.
And,
that was really good.
And Jay-Z, Sean Carter, actually spoke somewhat disparagingly about Harry Belafonte.
But it was the same way in the play. They
I agree with you. I agree with you. And I'm hoping to see, some of these artists today who are making a lot of money, what I would say at the expense of these communities.
You mean that these people, the people we're talking about, were the stepping stones for them to come up?
No doubt about it.
Yeah, so let's face it. I've got so much to ask you because you were in Enron. On Broadway. What was your role?
I was a traitor on, and
I
was part of the ensemble. Do you remember a guy doing a backflip?
I saw
during the dance?
you.
That was me.
I saw you
I do a little tumbling, yeah.
Because Enron started in London.
Yes, it did.
Did you
I never saw it in London. No, I only
then
did the American version. Yeah.
And I saw you in New York, which was great. And you got an Obie Award for Off-Broadway.
Yes.
What was that?
I did a play called The Blacks, Jean Genet's The Blacks.
Right.
And I played Archibald in that. Had a fantastic time. Probably one of the most emotionally, physically, and straining plays that I've ever done in my life.
Someone else was just talking about a Jean Genet play.
Yeah.
And saying how it's so surreal.
It is. And the way in which we did it, it was also very mentally draining as well, is that we encouraged the audience to participate. So it was always different every night, which is great. That is real theater for me, visceral theater. But the toughest part about it is that we're talking about race and politics. Everything that raises the hair on the back of your neck, we talked about in that play. So every night was a different show. Sometimes the show was 80 minutes long. Sometimes the show was almost 2 hours.
Really?
We had no intermission.
Really?
So, but in that, you had to be on your feet. You had to be ready to go. And no
intermission. Robert Cicchini was in one of those plays, and he said the same thing. There was always this give and take, and he was singing from a net up above the stage. And
wow.
It was like really interesting.
Yes.
And it sounds like your classical training is with the Classic Theater of Harlem.
Well, my classical training, I received my MFA from the Professional Theater Training Program at the University of Delaware.
So that's where
I got my classical training. Yeah.
But then you're the artistic director.
I'm the producing artistic director of the Classical Theater of Harlem. Yeah, the reason why the CTH came about is, or why I joined with it, I should say, is because here I am. I'm classically trained, and I would go to regional theaters, and let's say they were doing Romeo and Juliet. Okay, I'm a little long in the tooth for it now, but I wouldn't even be given an opportunity to audition for Romeo. Tybalt, Benvolio, no problem, but never Romeo. And I just wanted an opportunity. I was a working actor. I had no complaints. But I wanted an opportunity to have a play that was on my shoulders, that I could carry. And I also wanted to make the casting director, I want to make it difficult for them to say no to me. Because I felt like my skill was on the level of anybody else auditioning for those roles. So without complaint, once I got to New York and saw the Classical Theater of Harlem, they were pretty much a community theater at that point.
Where were they, uptown?
Yeah, uptown on 145th Street. We were sort of born at the Harlem School of the Arts. Yeah. So, and I started to see what was going on. Folks were thirsting. They hungered for classic plays. There were a number of artists up there who were classically trained who never really get an opportunity to work those chops.
Because of the roles, because they're like white roles,
yes,
right?
Well, that's what the consideration is in regional theater, is that, well, our audiences won't get if we have a black Romeo unless we have a white Juliet. I mean, there's a number of things, and I don't think that those are bad conversations to have.
No, but those are all working now.
Yeah.
Those are combinations that are working.
Yeah, and they're not new, right?
No,
we've seen those combinations before. But with Classical Theater of Harlem, we like to shake off the classics a little bit. We like to dust them off a little bit. And we want to give opportunities not only on stage to actors of color, but we want to see them in roles like stage managers and designers and directors.
Oh, you do all that.
Yeah, we want them to be whole artists.
That's fabulous.
So that's kind of the core of what we're doing at Classical Theater Forum. And I think that we are changing the face of American theater. I think people will look to us as a model where if indeed you want to build a company that is a cross-cultural model, we're the company to look at.
And we're going to keep watching. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with the Joan Quinn Profiles, and we're taping in the historic Max Factor building at the Hollywood Museum on Highland Avenue. Curator, architect Aurelia Engel was born and raised in France. She spent her late teens in California and graduated from the New School of Architecture in San Diego. Then she returned to France to obtain a Bachelor of Architecture. I guess it's from the School of Special Architecture. How do you say it in French?
École spéciale d'architecture.
Does that mean it's...
That was the school of Mallet Stevens.
And how do you explain it? Just the School of Architecture?
It's a school of architecture. It's one of the free school of architecture, so it was a very good program, I felt.
And you're the director also of the Francois Gillot Archives.
Right.
So why did you not practice architecture, or did you practice architecture?
I did practice architecture, and with my husband, Aurelia Engel, we built some homes with renewable energy, and so it was in Normandy. So it was very funny because I wanted, coming from California, history was for me something to play with. So I was inspired by the Normandy style of architecture, which is very strong. At the same time, I love California architecture with light and solar energy and everything. So I sort of played with both, and we did a very interesting project of 3 or 4 houses with my husband.
What's the architecture style in Normandy then? Just what we think of as old Normandy style?
Yeah, with wood, how do you call that, with the crisscrossing, of the
and
woods.
Round and...
Not round, more squarish, but with a mixture of material usually. They're freestanding structure, like oak structures with no nails, so it's all tongue and grooved. And it's with, how do you call that again in English? The colombage, like they do all the fake ones in Hollywood.
Yes,
and then with the
the fake ones.
The adobe in between the wood pieces.
Were they still building those kind of houses when you built your greenhouse? Your greenhouses?
Yeah, they were, and we were able to get some artisans from who were still doing the traditional. So it was really quite special to go back to France and be able to do an historic. At the same time, the inside is completely modern. And it is a solar house as well, and we are using,
Do you own it?
Yeah, we
Do you live in it?
That was our, dream building with my husband, and it was we put all of our heart into it.
Do you work with a firm of architects?
No, we worked together. My husband did the decoration, and I did all the plans.
So you never worked with a firm?
No, I had young children, and I didn't work with a firm, which I would like to.
But it was great that you went on your own. Was it difficult being alone and doing the architecture for this house?
Well, I was not alone. I was with my husband,
yes,
so that helped a lot because he was used to construction projects.
Oh, I see.
So we were a good team, except when we would both want to decorate a room because we were. Then it's my room. No, it's mine. No, it's mine. But eventually we learned to sort of split. The rooms. Okay, you do this one, I do this one. And it worked out well, and it was fun. You've
been working as a curator.
I was raised with the smell of turpentine, and I think I was raised as not an art critic, but an art viewer, an art seer and lover. And when I was a young child, I would go to my parents' studio, and they would always say, well, what do you think of the new paintings?
Oh, they did?
Always, And of course I understood very young that you better start to think of something. You couldn't just say, well, I don't know, I don't think anything. That was not possible. And so it, forced me to look at paintings and sort of see new things, or what was new, what was interesting, and so that was sort of how I got trained.
Was their style similar? Were they
They're
painting in the same?
Completely different. And they actually met when they were very young, 17 and 19, and they would fight about painting all the time, because my mother would only swear by the moderns, and my father was obsessed with Goya and Velázquez and copying the old masters. So they were constantly fighting. You know, every day they would see each other and fight about painting.
But they wouldn't be in the same studio.
No, no, no.
They had their own
they all, you know, they really needed to paint by themselves. But they appreciated each other's style, so it was interesting.
We have this huge book here, and I'm sure that this is part of the work that you've curated, right?
Right, and this is...
and you've written the foreword to it?
I've written... no, I think the foreword is by my mother, Françoise Gillot. I've written all the articles on painting. And it's something that sort of happened, and that's how we started working together. She was looking for someone to do first the technical text and the biography and all those things. And then my husband suggested I would try to write on the paintings, because he really loved the way I would speak about the paintings. And so I tried, and I was very intimidated. I thought, I've never tried to write on art.
Critique?
And,
it's a critique, more or less, right?
I wrote on architecture, but,
yeah.
you know, and I've tried, and I loved it, and my mother loved it, and we thought, this is wonderful, we need to keep going. So this is really how our collaborations got started.
And where does your mother live?
She lives in New York.
And you live in Boston.
And we live in Boston, so that I am close to her, but we are on our way to California. So this is my long-time dream. I love Los Angeles, my favorite city in the world.
Why is it? Why did you come here at such an early age?
I came very early because my stepfather and mother were living in San Diego, close to the Salk Institute. Jonas Salk was my stepfather.
Oh, and that's in La Jolla, right?
In La Jolla. And then Patrick Terray, who was, of course, his mother and grandmother were very great friends of my parents' family, my mother's family, for generations. Let's
talk about Patrick for a minute. He was the one who had Ma Maison.
Beautiful restaurant.
Beautiful, yeah. And it was the testing ground for like Wolfgang Puck and different
and it
wonderful.
Was such a wonderful place, and I saw it growing up because Patrick was a wonderful man, still is, and he was sort of like an older brother to me.
Oh, that's great.
And so he invited me when I was, I think, 17, to stay at his place, and I was so proud. This was the first person who invited me as an adult, you know, on my own without my parents. So I just thought that was absolutely marvelous. He would bring me to Melrose, you know, to the restaurant, and I would walk around to all the thrift shop in those days, buy gloves up to here, glamorous hats, you know, and this was really a wonderful time, and I fell in love with LA. I just adored Los Angeles.
He was very dramatic. He came from a family of restaurateurs,
Absolutely.
Right?
All of them were into restaurants and hotels, so he was really trained, and that was his love, too.
I remember when you would walk into Ma Maison, there'd always be a Rolls Royce out in front or something, and you'd walk through the people.
Right.
And then in the back was Orson Welles, always in the house. He would be sitting there at his table. And so it was a very Hollywood hangout.
It was a wonderful place. And Patrick was so incredible because he would he would be at the entrance, you know, noon and night, and would know everyone and say hello and had a nice word for everyone. I think that's what made it so special.
I think he created the drama.
Yes.
And I was talking to Stephen Verona the other day because he had one of the menus that David Hockney had done.
Right.
And I said, that's a menu with a Rolls Royce. And he said, that's my Rolls Royce. They used to park in front. But your mother also did a menu.
My mother did the logo for the restaurant with the birds, and she did a lot of the menus because, of course, she saw Patrick growing up, so he was very special to her.
I know. I wish we had those menus now. They were so beautiful.
Right.
But as part of your curating that you were talking about, you decided to go back to Harvard and take museum studies.
Yes, I always like to, I'm always very meticulous about everything. And so I always want to know, I'm sure I know what I'm doing. And I felt that to work with museum, you really need to know who they are, how they work, you know, how they organize. And so it's very exciting and it's a lot of fun. So
what is that
program
course?
Is very intense.
Oh, tell me what the course includes.
Well, the program is really first tells you who does what, when, where, and what the rules are. So you really get an idea also of what might be your place working with them or in museum. And then you learn about exhibition design, content development for exhibition, or about registrars, or about technologies, you know, high tech for the museums. And so then it allows you to find your place.
I was just going to say, then you can choose what you feel
Exactly.
the most comfortable
Yes,
in,
right.
like either registrar, doing paperwork,
Right.
installing an exhibition.
Exhibition, taking care of collections also,
Oh, right.
or taking care of development, which is really a very interesting job right now, or education. Education for museum, they will do all the programs for the public, so
I
that's
see.
also very exciting. But I think I will be more in exhibition development and design. That's really my forte.
And you would work with other people, not just your mother.
No, I would work with other artists, and we collect a lot of artists. And for example, I have this dear friend who I've been collecting. I've met her in the Idlewild School of Arts, which is also part of Los Angeles, a very important community for Los Angeles. Yes.
Idlewild is great. Yeah.
And I've met her when we were both very young, and I've been collecting her work. And she works on a principle of science and the cosmos and mixing it with symbolism, of mystical symbolism. So I love her work.
What's
it's
her
very
name?
interesting. Bonita Helmer.
And does she work here
She
in
works
Los Angeles?
here. She exhibits with the George Billis Gallery.
Oh,
She
George
works at
Billis.
Altis, which is also very interesting in LA. And she was at the...
But she's with your husband's gallery in Boston.
and she's with my husband gallery, the Aurelia Engel Fine Arts
Where is
in
that?
Boston. So we're right now working mostly, we're doing a website, so we'll be working mostly on our own and probably then in fairs and things
Oh,
like
I
that.
see. I
So,
see. That's
yes.
great. That's great.
Yes.
So just tell me a little bit about the relationship of your whole family. You've talked about Jonas Salk. You've talked about your parents who are painters. You have a half-sister who's a jewelry designer.
Right, Paloma is of course a famous jewelry designer.
Paloma Picasso.
Paloma Picasso, and doing perfumes, and she was like a second mother to me, because I was her little living doll. I think we're a few years apart, and so she would play with me, cut my hair, dress me up, and so she was a wonderful sister growing up. She was really a beautiful relationship.
All through the connection with your mother. Your mother is the dynamo.
My mother, my grandmother was a very strong woman.
Oh, she was.
And she was not an artist, but she did ceramics when she was young, and then I think she pushed my mother a lot, and then all of the children to grow into artists, and she loved the arts. Yeah, she had very good eyes for artistry also, and then on my father's side they were stained glass masters. So, for example, they did all the Reims Cathedral stained glass, my grandfather.
Is that right?
Right, and in Chartres and a lot of the churches. And then my aunt and uncle did the Chagall, all the Chagall stained glass.
Yes, because your mother married the famous scientist Jonas Salk, and so it was this big circle.
And he was like all the artists. He was, had a lot of imagination, of course, and very whimsical and totally in his dreams. And so, I realized that there were no barriers between the arts, the science. It's really all the creative minds, together.
And also the architecture down there, the Salk Institute.
It's such an inspiration. I was raised with the Reims, Gothic cathedral, and the Salk Institute on the other hand.
Who's the architect?
Louis Kahn, who is such beautiful, and it's like a temple. And each time you go there, you feel an emotion. You cannot go there and just feel, again, the Salk Institute. It gives you butterfly in the stomach. It's really exciting. It's a beautiful place, very meditative, and I was very lucky.
I think it's been so inspiring to talk to you. It has been inspiring, and I thank you, Aurelia, so much for coming to visit us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
And thanks for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. Write to JAQUINN1 at AOL.com.